From the Figure 4 Online Studios in beautiful Bothell, Washington, exclusively at WrestlingObserver.com, you're listening to The Bryan and Vinny Show with your hosts, Bryan Alvarez and Big Vinny V.
Well, it's the Bryan Vinny Show, everybody. February 11, 2018, figure4online.com/wrestlingobserver.com. It is Sunday here. That means the NWA World Championship Wrestling show from almost 30 years ago this week. All these WWE pay-per-views and such got in the way, so we're actually behind. This is late November 1987, so a little more than 30 years ago. The go-home show for Starrcade 87.
Thank God.
Thank God. This is the way things used to be. You plug this show over and over and over again.
Well, yes. I understand this from a business and marketing standpoint, but as a fan, going back and watching every show every week, I feel like in some ways I've seen the same show like 6 times in a row now.
Of course you have.
Yeah. Now, they have at least mentioned now the Bunkhouse Stampede. So at least they've dropped put a line in the water to keep you going for after the go home show, because there's the biggest show of the year coming up. But whatever happens after that, life will go on.
So it has been suggested that we review Starrcade next week.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
I don't think we need to watch the whole thing.
Dude, there's a lot of big matches on here, Vinny. What do you want to skip? The Sting match?
You can skip the Nikita Koloff.
After all of those promos? The scaffold match?
I've seen a scaffold match, therefore I have seen that one.
That Koloff-Terry Taylor match is a unification match. This is a big match. The first time in the history of wrestling, they've claimed. Anyway, last time somebody recommended something, it was that bloopers, bleeps, and body slams.
That was horrible.
So that does...
What was
that's
the other
a
one?
Strike.
Somebody else suggested something that I was so angry I was calling him out by name on the show.
Yeah, this happened a few times. Well, I mean, people have also suggested Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
That's
that was
true.
A success.
That worked out well.
So maybe next week we will watch Starrcade. I mean, if we skip all of the goofy stuff, I mean, it's not that long. It's not like it's a New Japan 5-hour, 6-hour show. I mean...
No, sure, that's true.
This match is 6 minutes. This match is 10 minutes. Very likely we will. I mean, we're not doing exactly 30 years ago anyway, so who cares?
Yeah.
There's always stuff coming up. But we'll decide as we get going here. This was a fine go-home show. It wasn't boring.
No.
There were some terrible jobbers.
Oh, Lord, yes.
There were some good promos.
Mm-hmm.
And amazingly, not one time on this show did we see Ron Garvey.
No.
The world heavyweight champion wasn't even on this show. What? Where was he? Flair was here.
I don't know.
Like everybody. Well, I guess the Rock and Rolls weren't here.
Flair, Dusty, Nikita, the Road Warriors, the Midnights. The other Horsemen weren't there. Tully and Arn weren't there. Lex was there. JJ was there.
Yeah. They did mention that David Crockett was on assignment.
I was so heartbroken. The go-home show for Starrcade, and you got something better for David Crockett to do than call matches?
This is like when Vince McMahon or Stephanie McMahon or one of the McMahons, they've got like a meeting Monday night at 9:30.
Or a very important workout.
Yeah. Like once a week you got a Raw show, you got a meeting scheduled at 9:30. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
All right, let's get going.
So, NWA World Championship Wrestling, November 21st, 1987. As noted, no David Crockett. So Dusty Rhodes comes out for a promo. Tony called him Stardust.
Maybe he was in the middle of selling the company. Because that's coming.
That is. So, yeah, I knew Stardust was Dusty's promo going way back, but it is funny considering, you know, his son was Stardust for a while.
Yes.
Dusty hyped up the New York card, hyped up Starrcade, and said he would be entering the Bunkhouse Stampede with a U.S. title around his waist.
That's right.
New Breed versus David Isley and Terry Jones. So Chris Champion was out for a long time with a busted arm, and now he's back with a cast on the arm and circuitry in it, because he's from the future.
Yes.
And he has a futuristic cast that will make his arm heal better.
Which, by the way, this futuristic cast has been on his arm for a long time.
That's true.
Like, if he would have had a real cast, he'd be healed by now. So I don't know what. I mean, I'm thinking this might be a gimmick that he hits people with.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah.
Well, he used the bionic cast when I believe it was Terry Jones threw a punch and Champion caught it and squeezed his fist nearly to the point of submission.
Yes.
Royal gets in there, fucks up a sharpshooter, shouts, "Come on, you sheeps!"
He's referring to the sheep herders.
Yes.
Why?
Well, cause.
I mean, this is not on Starrcade.
Was it a dark match?
I don't know. I don't think so.
They called him out last week too. So everyone, hey, you know what? After compared to the Kevin Sullivans and Ricky Santanas who just come in here and talk about everybody else, if they're just going into business for themselves and trying to book a program with the sheep herders, great.
And if I recall correctly, there's another match that they hyped up last week that was only aired in one city on closed circuit. What was it?
I think you remember talking about that. Regardless, the new breed here won with the elevated leg lariat, and then they cut a promo where they just pretended to be the sheep herders. And I couldn't help but notice they are way more entertaining and interesting when they're imitating the sheep herders.
The Mighty Wilbur match.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They plugged that last week, and it wasn't. I mean, it was in one city, and now maybe this is going to be in one city for all I know.
So the new breed, I realize it's too late to tell them this unless they're still in the future at this point, but they need to be from the New Zealand of 2002 because they're much more fun that way. And the champion at the very end, he steps forward to shout into the camera, and Tony has to follow him and hold the mic over his shoulder, and Tony was so annoyed by this.
So, Sean Royal is not good for much, like anything,
Okay.
but he can do a great impersonation of the sheep herders.
Yeah.
So, I got to give the guy that. So, what Champion vowed at the end was they were going to win 2002 style.
Okay.
Does anyone remember the year 2002 in professional wrestling? It was just about the worst year in the history of wrestling. ECW was dead.
Yeah.
WCW had died.
Yeah.
WWE screwed up the invasion. Everybody stopped watching. That's where these guys are from. It all makes sense now.
They
were like, we got to get out of here.
every bit as bad.
Gotta go
as the rest
back
of
in time.
2002.
I mean, think about it. In 2002, if you could go back in time, I mean, you go back to 87 Crockett.
I would.
That's where I'd go.
Yeah.
So they had it right.
I think 2002 was the build-up to the Triple H Scott Steiner Royal Rumble match, which was very bad, as you recall.
That's the one thing you can remember that was bad in 2002.
There's a lot of bad in
How about
2002.
everything?
Okay. J.J. Dillon and Lex Luger came out for a promo. They claimed they had flown to New York merely to visit the stadium or the arena where the show would be held next week.
Well, this is where history will be made. Dusty Rhodes will retire for 90 full days.
No, that's a Starrcade.
Oh.
They're talking about the New
You're
York
right.
show. Yeah.
The New York show. That's right. I'm sorry.
So they plugged War Games, which JJ was sure to call the original Survivor Series. And then they go to Lex. I don't know what got into Lex this week.
He was good.
He was energetic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he inhaled. His entire promo was shouting as loud and as fast as he could. You call yourself a legend? Well, I'm going to be at the legend. Over and over and over and over again.
He's hit and miss, but he was on.
He was certainly not boring.
No, it was not boring.
Mike Rotundo versus Tommy Angel.
So I think it was with you. I'm virtually certain that it was with you. We were talking about Bo and Bray and how fat they are.
Okay.
And I brought up IRS, actually, is what I called him.
Oh, the family tree.
Yes.
Yes.
And you were like saying, well, you know, he was a little chunky or whatever. Mike Rotundo is in fine shape here.
At this point, absolutely.
And I was thinking about this. Like, he's no Lex Luger, but he's in way better shape than Bo Dallas.
Yes.
He's in way better shape than Bray Wyatt.
Yes.
What is their excuse? And I was thinking, I actually wrote, it's not like they're Rikishi's sons. And then I remembered who Rikishi's sons are. They're the Usos.
Yeah.
Way better shape than Bo and Bray.
That's also true.
Why are they so fat?
Well, you'd have to ask them. But Mike Rotundo, as noted, was in very good shape here.
His last name was Rotundo.
It's right there, Rotund.
But he wasn't.
No. At
The
this point.
children are.
He got fatter later.
He got a little fatter, but he wasn't like Rotundo.
He was not Rikishi.
No.
No. Regardless, here he had a very even, back and forth technical wrestling matchup with Tommy Angel for 3 or 4 minutes. And then in the end, he hit the airplane spin and he won.
Not much to write about.
That's all I've got.
Not much.
Had the Starrcade Control Center.
With Magnum TA.
Magnum TA, my biggest takeaway from this is obviously Magnum has a very successful pro wrestler who was forced to retire right when he was about to hit his peak. It was very sad, but the good news is, at this point, he has transitioned into being a very good TV guy.
Sure, but he wasn't like a super regular. Like, if it were WWE today and he was one of their big stars, like if he were Randy Orton, he got in a terrible accident, he could never wrestle again. Like, if Randy Orton wanted to, he could have a commentary job for the rest of his life.
Yes.
Like, if this were today and Magnum were in WWE, he'd have a commentary job for the rest of his life. They put him in a suit. You can't see that he's lost a ton of weight. He's in a chair, so you can't see that his arm doesn't work.
He doesn't have to walk.
Great talker. Yeah, he doesn't have to walk. I mean, he looked great. Yeah. Sounded great.
Sounded great.
Did all of his predictions.
So he ran through he did do his predictions here. First, they showed clips of... Actually, let's go back to the very beginning. First, they asked what it meant to be at Starrcade. And he talked about what an honor it was just to be invited to that show. But then once you get there, success or failure on that show can make or break your career. Very important. They showed clips of his most famous match, the cage match against Tully Blanchard.
By clips, you mean literally about 10 seconds of this match.
Yeah, it was a clip.
Here are some clips of your legendary I Quit match with Tully Blanchard. Clip, done. You know, because you had a little more than that.
They could have
2 hours.
They did have a 2-hour show. They could have shown more.
I mean, wouldn't that make you excited for Starrcade to see that?
To think about how great Starrcade the Starrcade match.
Legendary Starrcade match.
So here we go. Magnum TA's predictions.
Yes.
I hope you all write these down and compare to the actual results.
I do. I have all of the results. I won't tell you who won.
Okay.
But I'll just tell you how he did in his predictions.
I see. Well, I'll run down the predictions and you get the final tally.
Yes.
Okay. Picked Michael Hayes, Jimmy Garvin, and Sting.
The newcomer Sting, he says.
The newcomer Sting to defeat Larry Zbyszko, Eddie Gilbert, and Rick Steiner in the six-man.
Yep.
Said Steve Williams would beat Barry Windham to retain the UWF title.
He said, I'm very good friends with both men, but Dr. Death has a slight edge. Nice way to put it.
It has. He said the Midnight Express would beat the Rock and Roll Express in the scaffold match due to Big Bubba Rogers' interference.
He's going to climb the scaffold?
Apparently.
Good luck with that.
So Tony's, rattling off a list of matches, and he says, Nikita Koloff versus Terry Taylor in the TV title unification match. And Magnum smirks. That's almost humorous. The NWA is always the best. Nikita Koloff's going to win.
He was disgusted to even have to answer that question.
He was insulted for sure.
How can you even ask? The NWA is the best. Of course, our man's going to win.
His biggest surprise, I think, well, one of them, he said Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, the best defensive team I've ever seen, he says, would retain the tag team titles over the Road Warriors in their hometown.
Well, he feuded with Tully.
Yes, he did.
This man would know.
And he faced the Road Warriors in the finals of the first Crockett Cup.
That's right.
Yep. And then the real biggest surprise, he didn't really pick a winner in Lex Luger versus Dusty Rhodes, but if you break down what he said, you could tell he thought Lex was going to win and just didn't have the heart to say it about his old friend. So the young lion, Lex Luger, would be too hard to stop. And finally, Ronnie Garvin would retain the world title over Ric Flair.
So for the record, everybody, he got 3 of his predictions right.
Out of 9?
Out of 7.
Out of 7.
And it's funny because as he starts giving his predictions, I'm like, he's going to get everyone right. And then I went back later and I thought, man, he only got 3 of them right.
I just expected him to pick every single babyface.
No, he's got to have his credibility because he's doing commentary for the show.
And it's a sport.
Yes.
You must admit that your best friends can be beaten.
Now later there were heels that picked all the heels.
Yes.
But he must
because they did not need credibility.
Yes, maintain his credibility.
Yeah, Magnum was very good here. Sting versus Cougar J.
These fans adore everything that Sting does.
Yeah.
I was thinking Sting, I thought that Sting was a Hall of Famer. There's a big debate. Is he a Wrestling Observer Hall of Famer or not? He finally goes in. And you watch Sting, and Sting was never great. He had some great matches, but he was never a great wrestler. You never put him in he was like a Flair.
He was never the wrestler of the year.
No, nothing like that. And I don't know anything about the guy. I could be reading too much into this, but I saw a young guy here who's in great shape. Mm-hmm. He's just started. He's very green. There's some things that he can do that look good. Mm-hmm. Stinger splash, the big overhead press, and all of this other stuff. and the fans absolutely, completely adore the guy. What was his incentive to get better? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was a star. He did just enough.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What was his motivation?
No, that's a great point. He was already.
That's all I saw during this match.
He was arguably the most popular guy on the show, outside of like a Dusty. They absolutely, of all the guys who actually wrestled, they loved him more than anyone. I did find it funny. Sting's not his first great rivalry, but one of his most famous rivalries was with Vader. Here, Sting did a Vader bomb.
Yeah.
And he kept on wrestling. Kind of sloppy, but didn't matter. Everyone loved him. He won with a Stinger Splash. And he gets to cut his promo.
Oh my God. Another great, crazy Sting promo. You know what he reminded me of? He reminded me of John Cena.
Well,
they have similar physique, similar haircut. But the thing that reminded me of John Cena was he had some really stupid dialogue, but he was so over that it didn't matter.
there's so much energy and charisma.
He's calling Eddie Gilbert Hot Puff.
Yeah, Hot Puff Eddie Gilbert.
This
more
is
than
death.
once.
This is absolute death. But every time he said it, the place would go crazy.
The other thing about that's similar to Cena is that there was a bit of humanity to him, and that he was not afraid to acknowledge when he screwed something up.
Sure.
He'd fumble over a line or lose his place, and he'd just stop, and he'd slap the mat, or he'd howl, and they'd all get into it. Like, it was better that way. So
Not as good as Dr. Death later. But he did a very good job when things weren't going his way.
So he called out Hot Puff, said he was not afraid to lower himself to Gilbert's level. His good friend Dr. Death had brought him a new hold from Japan, the Scorpion. Worked out well.
Man, sure did.
He promised to use it on Gilbert and Larry Zbyszko. He's just screaming randomly, and every time he did it, people loved him more. And then the last thing he said is like, "Rick Steiner, you've got no brains and very little brawn." Well, that's just a lie.
That is an absolute lie.
Barry Windham appeared for a promo.
Nothing to say.
He very quickly mentioned Steve Williams in the UWF title, and then said Larry Zbyszko could get a Western States title shot whenever he wanted. Kevin Sullivan versus Alan Martin.
You know what I noticed during this match?
What's that?
Kevin Sullivan, at one point, gets on the middle rope, and he does a karate chop.
Yeah.
Where's Jinder's chop? I've named an entire year-long segment
After his chop
that he did on one show.
Yes.
That AJ Styles match in December.
Well,
he has never done it since.
Think about this. He lost the match.
I know, but come on. It's like the only good thing he did in all of 2017.
Well, it could have been that good. He lost the match.
And he's taken it out of the...
He must figure, had I not done that stupid chop, I would still be world champion to this day.
That chop did not lead to the finish, Vinny.
I know.
And that chop was effective when he did it. I was disgusted.
I watched Kevin Sullivan go up there, and I'm pretty dang sure that he wanted Alan Martin to stay down. And
he did the Grand Naniwa rope walk.
Basically,
and then chopped him.
Yes, he gets up, and Martin's like halfway bent over, and Sullivan is like, and he did that. Sullivan, you know what I noticed in this match? Kevin Sullivan's legs are enormous.
Well, so is his gut.
Well,
and
yeah.
His trunks were like, rolling down.
He kept trying to pull. I'm pretty sure the drawstring to his trunks broke.
It was exceedingly unflattering.
His cardio was not the best. He was a powerful man, not necessarily lean.
He lifted a lot of weights.
He sure did.
And not a lot of reps.
He did just enough to jump up in the air and come down with both feet on Martin and pin him.
Yeah.
So they go to commercial, and every time they go to commercial, there is the same music and the same graphic, and there's a clip from the last match in slow-mo, and then some wacky catchphrase, like a fortune cookie almost, at the bottom. The catchphrase at this time said, "May I point out, the NWA is the best in wrestling."
Yeah.
If only they knew what was to come on this show.
Well, you got to take the good with the bad.
Steve Williams versus Thunderfoot number 2.
This was the good.
Eventually.
You know what I loved about this is, nowadays, the German suplex where he dropped the guy into his head, it's like a spot. Oh my God, he dropped him on his head. And like, sometimes the guy will sell his neck and be down for a long time. Sometimes the guy will jump up and fire up and everything like that. Dr. Death gives Thunderfoot. This is Thunderfoot number 2, not a main eventer.
No.
He gives his jobber a German suplex, and he lifts him up, and it's a high angle, and this Thunderfoot lands right on his neck. Just gets up.
Yes.
Locks up again. What?
Well, there was that. Then there was the fact that I think Williams watched the Mike Rotundo match and thought, I'm going to go out there and have a good wrestling match too. And he tried to have an amateur wrestling match with Thunderfoot number 2.
So they do this spot. It is unbelievable. Dr. Death has him in a side headlock on the mat. The Thunderfoot grabs Dr. Death around the waist, and he tries to bridge him over to, do the cradle, and then Dr. Death will just come back into the headlock again.
Yeah.
So he tries to pull him over. Dr. Death doesn't go. Thunderfoot's like, oh no, I'm pulling you over, buddy. And he pulls with all of his might, and he finally, it's like a shoot, he finally gets Dr. Death over. But Dr. Death's legs go a little bit too far, so Dr. Death can't bring himself back the other way to get the headlock again. So instead, he keeps going and does a shoot on the mat, headlock, takeover, and flips Thunderfoot back over again.
Yes.
This was like a shoot.
Well, in that aspect, I guess it was good. I thought it was...
No, it wasn't good.
Okay, it was enjoyable, entertaining, notable.
It was realistic.
There you go.
Which is not always good.
Eventually, Williams gave up on the wrestling match, just started powerhousing the guy around, hit the press slam, the running backdrop, and the power slam, and won.
I thought this match was amazing.
Well, I can see why you would say that.
Then
In the promo, he goes to join Tony at the announce desk, and Tony says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Death Steve Williams," or whatever. He holds out the mic, and Steve says, clear as day, "Excuse me, everyone, there is a piece of hair in my mouth."
Excuse me, Tony, I had a piece of hair in my mouth.
Yes. And if you saw his head, there's a lot of long hair there.
This is not like he said it clearly, as in, he says it off mic, but you can kind of hear him.
Yeah.
He grabs the mic, he looks right at Tony and says, "Excuse me, Tony, I had a piece of hair in my mouth."
He said it the way Miz says, "I'm awesome."
Yeah.
Just shouts it right into the camera. Then he goes into his promo. He says, "This match with Wyndham is going to be just like when Oklahoma played Nebraska in football. Two great athletes. One of them's got to win. Only one can win. Either way, I'm going to shake your hand after the match. Now, it could be amateur wrestling. It could be a bar fight. I know everything about it. I know everything about both of them. But this is going to be a wrestling match. And oh, by the way, my money's on the Dream." And he winked.
He did note that him and Barry Windham were like friends.
He did say that.
He didn't say we are friends. He said we're like friends. And it was funny the way that he did his Dusty Rhodes thing. He says, "Whether it's a bar fight or a wrestling match, and it'll be a wrestling match, my money is on Dusty Rhodes."
It was... Maybe they gave him the wrap-up signal and he wasn't expecting it. I don't know.
I guess.
There was definitely a wacky man. So here comes Ricky Santana.
Hey, let's get the positive out of the way first. The man looked like a star.
Okay.
Dressed like a star. Talked like a star.
Sure.
Thank God he was not in the ring.
There was nothing wrong with anything he did here.
No.
He comes out. He does what he always does. Thanks the fans. Thanks Tony for having him on there. He said, again, "I predict Dusty Rhodes will beat Lex Luger. I predict Ronnie Garvin will beat Ric Flair." He spoke in Spanish for a while, but not so long to the point where he got booed. Thanked everyone again, and that was that. And he was done. It was fine. But for weeks now, he's been not even calling out. He's been talking about Ric Flair. And Ric Flair has been warning him, "Don't talk about me." And he comes out here on the Go Home show for Starrcade. You talking about dressing like a star. Let's list in detail what he was wearing. White jeans. White buttoned-up shirt.
Excellent.
And
shows off the tan.
A jacket that was either white or maybe carnation. It was kind of hard to tell in the light. Regardless, this was an outfit meant to be bled on. And I was so giddy looking forward to Ric Flair and the Go Home show for Starrcade murdering this man.
No.
And it never happened.
Don't get ahead of yourself, Vinny.
They're going to do Ric Flair as world champion versus Ricky Santana?
Well, I mean, they'd have to.
I guess so.
The show's Thursday.
Yeah. So apparently, okay, good for Ricky then. Regardless, I was expecting a massacre on the show, and I didn't get it, and that left me a little bummed.
So for the record, we had Ricky Santana, followed by Ricky Steiner versus Ricky Nelson.
And Ricky Santana was talking about Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's too many Ricks.
So I must...
Only one of these men should be allowed to be named Rick. And it ain't Flair tonight.
I will allow it for this night because Rick Steiner versus Ricky Nelson was awesome. Mainly because Rick Steiner killed this guy.
You know, I said this on Twitter, and I stand by this. This 1987 Rick Steiner was scarier than 1999 Scott Steiner. I'm going to tell you why. Because 1999 Scott Steiner was in like his late 30s, early 40s.
Yes.
You believed he could probably kill anybody, but there was always that thought that maybe he's going to tear something or maybe he's going to get blown up.
He was already losing significant mobility.
Sure. Rick Steiner here, he'd have killed anybody.
Bears.
This was the scariest dude I ever saw in my life. He Germaned this poor little fool, as you noted, Ricky Nelson, right on his head. Ricky Nelson, unlike the Thunderfoot, did not leap to his feet. He was dead.
He was killed.
Rick gave him the most incredible power slam you've ever seen in your life. Just flipped him 80 miles an hour and just slammed him down into the mat.
Nelson's coming at him off the ropes, and Rick goes for the twisting power slam that Randy Orton and a million other guys do. He throws him into the air. He had to grab him to stop him from flying out of the ring.
Yes.
And they slammed him down.
And the impact, it was like in the 80s when they had those commercials of like cars running into a brick wall and the dummy is not in a seatbelt.
Yes.
That's what this was here. This guy should have buckled up for this power slam.
You should wear a seatbelt when wrestling Rick Steiner. I can't recommend that strongly enough. He beat him. Looked like he was having the time of his life.
He was!
Man. And who wouldn't?
I was. And I wasn't even beating up Ricky
Eventually,
Nelson.
he won with a belly-to-belly. Very good squash match.
He's wearing one black boot and one white boot.
He did that.
Which the Steiners did because they would just switch boots.
Yeah. Apparently, Rick did his entire career.
Well, what was amazing was Scott was wrestling at this point.
Okay.
I just always had this idea that they just broke in as a team together. Wrong.
No,
they did their own thing for like 3 years before they finally became a team.
Scott was he was in Memphis for a while.
Yeah.
And no, it's still, in fact, from here, it's still like 2 or 3 years, I think.
It was 89.
Oh, 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Sullivan came out for a promo. Who the hell does Ricky Santana think he is, questioning Ric Flair? Lex Luger, you have no chance against Dusty Rhodes. You better get 2 machetes and a saber in your mouth. That was a great line. And finally, he said Steve Williams was a total wrestling machine, and he would show that he was a man and Barry Windham was still a boy. And that was it. Midnight Express versus Rex King and Max MacGyver. You can add Bobby Eaton to the list of men who do the skull-crushing finale better than The Miz.
Oh, no. You mentioned his name.
I did earlier.
Anyway, finish.
So the Express beat them up. You can see they were just openly experimenting with some new double teams. They may have made them up on the spot. And then they won with a rocket launcher.
All right, so The Miz. I'm going to keep this quick. Everyone's sick of us talking about The Miz, but listen to me. Jim Cornette does a promo about the scaffold match. And I've mentioned many times, I think Miz is a great talker. He is not a great promo. I bring up things where he goes like, I'm the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. I've brought prestige back to this belt. Okay, listen, I grew up in the early 90s. You have not brought the Intercontinental title back to where it was in the early 90s. And then people go, well, he's full of it. He's a heel. Okay, listen, Jim Cornette's a heel here. Jim Cornette is cutting a promo about the scaffold match at Starrcade with the Rock and Roll Express. Mm-hmm. This is a deadly serious promo. He is explaining this is the deadliest match in the history of wrestling. These guys are going up on this scaffold. Guys could be thrown off. Can you look into a guy's eyes and throw him off a 20-foot scaffold, maybe to his death?
This man has feelings. This man has a family.
He is pushing this as a deadly serious match, and you, the viewer, are like, someone could die on Thursday. Like, this is a real deal, legit heel, big time, money drawing promo. This is not going out there and talking all, whatever, and
he wasn't just boisterous
being
for the sake
full
of
it and, good enunciation. This was a great heel promo. That's how it's done.
Talked about how people questioned why they would be in a War Games match the night before Starrcade, and he says, well, our only goal in War Games is to take out the Rock and Rolls, injure them, hurt their arm, hurt their leg, hurt their back, so they're not at 100% going to that scaffold match. Because the scaffold match is mostly luck, he says, but we're going to make our own luck. And yes, he questioned the Rock and Roll Express at the killer instinct it would take to throw a man off the scaffold, knowing he would never be the same again.
Didn't they basically throw him off a scaffold?
No, it was the Road Warriors.
Oh, that's right. It was the Road Warriors.
Yeah. Who do have the killer instinct, and no one ever questioned them.
Yeah, we find that out later.
Yeah. Flair came out for a promo.
So he starts talking, and then they just cut away for a danger zone.
Well, he was pushing the tape.
I see.
He's got the VHS tape in one hand and the swimsuit calendar in the other hand, which he was open to Missy Hyatt because he wants people to buy it.
Yeah, it's like a swimsuit calendar with dudes.
11 dudes and Missy Hyatt.
Yeah.
If you want a swimsuit, if you want to know what Steve Williams and Jimmy Garvin looked like in their Speedos, they got the calendar for you.
I mean, don't we see that every week?
Pretty close. It's like take your boots off.
What's the difference?
Yeah. So they showed, I guess, clips from the tape. There's promos. There's wrestling action. And there's fans talking about how great it was. And then it's only $24.95.
First off, we have to review this.
The Danger Zone?
Magnum TA and Missy Hyatt host this thing, okay? They did, in fact, say this Danger Zone video cassette is available on VHS or beta for the low price of $24.95 plus $4.95 shipping and handling.
That's right. I forgot the shipping and handling.
That's like $1,000 in today's money. Now, I'm only being mildly sarcastic. I actually found out, do you know how much this was worth in today's money back then?
How much, Brian, in 2018 dollars would this have been worth?
$62.92 for a 1-hour video cassette and a calendar with 11 wrestlers and Missy Hyatt.
And as far as I can tell, it's not even full matches. It's just interviews and promos because the fans are talking about how it's great to get to know these guys as people.
So think of the value you get for $8 a month, getting at least 12 hours of the Bryan and Vinny show at video.f4wonline.com.
Yes.
This is a real deal. $64 or $62.92. I got to get this exact. I don't want to over-exaggerate.
No.
They were asking you for $62.92 to get this tape delivered to your house. An hour!
A 1-hour videotape.
Video cassette.
Yes. So they go to break, and they come back, and Flair's still out there, and now he's pushed the video. He can talk about whatever he wants to now. Says there's monkeys in the crowd dressed like Dusty and studs in the crowd dressed like Flair. And he says, all right, enough of the fans. Let's talk about me. Says Magnum have been out there giving him predictions. Who's Magnum to predict his match? Magnum's only claim to fame is that I carried him to a great match for 60 minutes when I could have beat him whenever I wanted. And here's Ricky Santana in his $9 outfit. He's talking about my life. He assured Ricky his life was built around fast women, fast cars, and the winner's circle. Says Ronnie Garvin's been walking around with his world title.
This is not the people's belt, he says. It's my belt.
Yes. And he says in Chicago, Garvin's going to be mine all night long. And then he talked about New York, said the NWA was going to take over. The Road Warriors versus Dale Laperouse and Curtis Thompson.
I got to get it out of the way. If we're wrong about who's Dale Laperouse, I want to apologize to the other guy. I'm pretty sure we got Dale Laperouse right.
I recall Dale Laperouse being horrible. We haven't seen him in a long time.
He was the absolute worst.
For now.
I mean, he had the worst hair that you can have and have a full head of hair. You know what I mean?
It was awful.
Like usually like a guy's losing some of his hair, but he's got the bald eagle mullet or he's got some goofy. This guy had a full head of hair.
Yeah.
And it was the worst haircut. And that's coming from me.
It was the bowl
cut. You know how many bad haircuts I've had in my life? More than just about anybody. Dale Laperouse.
The parted down the middle bowl cut mullet.
Oh.
The wispy mustache to go with it.
An appalling mustache.
He's tall and gangly. Not like skinny, gangly.
Nothing resembling a physique.
No. And you know, we watch a lot of weird shit in wrestling. We see minis versus grown men. We watch 300-pound men fight women in Lucha Underground. I have never seen something that made me say, this should be illegal. Dale Laperouse should not be allowed to wrestle the Road Warriors. The commissions have stepped in and said, this is not fair.
No.
Someone's going to get hurt. And someone did get hurt, and it was Dale Laperouse. They killed him. They didn't even hit their move on him. He would have died for sure. If they had hit the Doomsday Device on him, he'd have hit the mat, and his arms and legs and head would have all fallen off. So they hit sandwich lariats instead and pinned him.
Which may have meant that like he couldn't take that move. Neither of them.
That's what I'm thinking.
Dude.
So they cut a promo, said they had never been NWA World Tag Team Champions. There's no better place in their hometown of Chicago for the belts to change hands. Hawk says, you know, promoters pay big money for people to do stupid things. And these guys are paying the horse and the biggest money of all to do the stupidest thing of all, and that's get in the ring with us.
That was a great promo.
It was a great promo.
Hawk is more miss than hit, but this was a hit.
Larry Zbyszko versus Larry Stevens. 4 Ricks later, and they got 2 Larrys that have to be in the same segment here.
Yeah. Larry was pretty good in this match.
He was. He looked pretty good in this squash.
He did a little stalling.
Not a ton.
Nah, I mean, it just he yelled at the people and yelled at the ref.
He gave the guy a chance to back out of the match.
Yeah.
Then he beat him up and says, "I gave you a chance, brother," and continued to beat him up.
Yes.
And eventually he won with the was a sloppy neck breaker. I will assume that is Larry Stevens' fault.
Tony claimed, and I quote, "He almost jerked his head right out of the socket."
Yes.
That's a serious neck breaker.
It is.
He almost jerked the guy's head out of his, the neck socket?
The head socket.
I didn't know you had one of those. I guess the head must connect to something. There must be a socket.
The neck bone, I'd always heard.
That connects to the neck. The head bone connects to the neck bone. I was unaware there was a socket.
Maybe that song wasn't accurate. So they go to commercial and they come back.
I mean, it's pretty accurate.
Okay. And Larry and Baby Doll's amazing 1980s outfit. Kind of promo. She's out there in black spandex pants and a black spandex top with a big, thick gold belt like a championship around her waist and a white, like a shawl over on top of it. And of course, her hair is just teased out to the heavens. So Larry is also insulted that Magnum has picked him to lose at Starrcade. Says, "You look across the ring, I see 2 guys who think they're in a rock band and 1 guy playing trick or treat." Says Starrcade is the deadline for Barry Windham to surrender the Western States Heritage Championship. If he doesn't surrender it to Larry or Baby Doll at Starrcade, then Larry's going to come and get it. Said Barry had one weakness as a wrestler, and that's that he was too tall.
Well, he said he had weaknesses. He had many weaknesses he's learned from Baby Doll. And he's going to give him a hint. 1, he is too tall and thus has no leverage.
That's right.
And 2, he's too tall and thus has no speed.
I see.
Okay, hold on a second. So, if I had a car, okay, and I had to lift the car, okay, and I had a boulder, you got this?
I think so.
Okay, so if I took a really, 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 really long board and put one end of the car and one end over here and the boulder in the middle, I mean, maybe I could use that leverage to lift the car. But if I had a really short board and the boulder very close, there's no way I'm lifting the car. What is Larry talking about here?
I'm not gonna. You're right, Brian. About
Thank you.
Your car boulder board analogy.
Thank
you're
you.
right. You were on the longest board possible.
Thank you. That was on my black belt test.
Now, okay. Okay.
There's a written portion about leverage.
So Larry threatens to go through Barry Windham, Nikita Koloff, and Dusty Rhodes to get a world championship title shot.
Nothing we've said on this show is worse than this next match.
Nothing I've done in my life is worse than this next match. If you thought the Jive Tones were bad last week... Actually, you know what? Let me take that back. If you thought Tiger Conway Jr. was bad last week... We had the Jive Tones versus El Negro and BT Washington. Now, if this... A good chunk of this match was Tiger Conway Jr. versus BT Washington.
Oh.
If it had just been those 2 men...
Singles match?
In a singles match, this may well have been the worst match I've ever seen.
Yes.
This was Shelly Martinez bad when those 2 were in there together. Now, El Negro was significantly less horrible than BT Washington. He was no good, but he was better. And Shaska Watley, when he was in there, appeared to be completely competent. He was very bad last week, but he was up to his game here.
With that said, this was still the worst tag match. It had to be the worst tag match of 2018. Like, if it happened today, there's no way anything could be worse.
I thought you were going to say of all time.
Well, I mean...
It's up there.
It probably is up there, but...
I'm trying to think of really, really terrible 2-on-2 tag team matches.
Heroes of Wrestling.
Iron Sheik and Volkov versus the Bushwhackers. Yep. That's one. I was going to say Chronic
against the Sheep Herders. Can you even imagine?
Oh, the Sheep Herders in 98.
Oh, my God.
Undertaker and Kane versus Chronic. Also quite terrible.
Yeah, one worst match of the year.
Yeah, and much longer. So
I mean, this would... If this happened in 2018, it would win worst match of the year.
I think so.
I mean, unquestionably.
Like I've said many, many times that to you, the listener or the viewer, if you are untrained, you can still have a better match than whatever match we were watching. I think the vast majority of our audience could get drunk and do a better match than BT Washington and Tiger Conway.
I think Dale Lapperouse was laughing at this match backstage.
Oh, for sure.
When it was happening. We had dudes going too fast. We had dudes falling all over each other. We had dudes landing on their heads. We had dudes tripping and falling down. We had dudes that were just completely lost.
I couldn't even keep track of what was going on.
In a 20 by 20 foot square, they were lost.
In 4 minutes.
They may as well have been in a maze.
Yes, I could not tear my eyes away from the screen to write down anything specific, but it's all coming back to me now. When Tiger Conway...
How could you even write anything specific? I don't even know what was going on. Guys just fell down right and left.
Tiger Conway did, in fact, almost kill BT Washington with a body slam.
He lifted him up and just let go.
Yes. There was the time when BT Washington was getting whipped from rope to rope and just fell on his face. I don't know what happened. It did seem like anytime anyone touched BT Washington, he collapsed.
It was funny because the guy was being whipped in. And usually when you lose your balance, it's like you take a few steps, stumble, try to regain your balance, stumble a little more, fall down. No. The moment he was whipped in, he just fell flat on his face.
It would be like if a guy was skiing down a hill and just like you pulled a tripcord and his feet hit it and his face planted. It was amazing. So yeah, it went on for a while. It was at no point was it not horrible. Like I say, one of the worst matches I've ever seen. One of the worst tag matches I've ever seen. And eventually they won with the double leg sweep the Jive Tones did. And then you noted all Tiger Conway Jr. had to do, he's on his back, the other guy's on his back. All he's got to do is roll over and make a cover. That was too complicated.
That's right, he didn't even make it over.
No.
It's like when Ryback hit the shell shock, but he's not facing the hard cam, so he's got to float over. Tiger Conway floated basically to half guard. He got halfway over, maybe, and that's when they just stopped.
Which, for those of you not familiar with jiu-jitsu, is just one dude lying on another.
Yeah, he didn't even get his both legs over to the mount.
No.
Speaking of that, there was a Tai Tuivasa fight this weekend in UFC with Cyril Asker, which...
Are you making these names up?
No, just went way too long. But anyway, Asker's just getting he's just getting pounded on.
I say he's getting his ass kicked.
Well, he was.
Ass curd.
Like 2 minutes straight, he's just getting pounded on. And the ref won't stop it. And he's just standing there, and he's just like going like this for 2 minutes as he gets hit over and over again. And finally, he just fell down, and the ref stopped it. He just like, all of a sudden just goes bonk and falls down. That's what happened when this guy was trying to be thrown from one side of the ring to the other.
Yes.
He just fell down. This was terrible.
Unbelievably bad. I command all of you to go out of your way to see this. It was
actually unbelievably bad.
I cannot believe how bad this was.
You're hearing this and you're thinking we're exaggerating, but if you go back and watch El Negro and BT Washington versus the Jive Tones, you will not believe it. That is a guarantee.
Tiger Conway and BT Washington are tied for this week's worst wrestler of all time of the week.
Yes.
A pox on you. They went to get a promo, called out Ron Simmons. They dared him to find a partner, and this suggested a bunch of guys who already had matches for Starrcade. That was a good one. And it seems like they're done. They both stop, and they look at the camera for a second, and they must have gotten the camera to keep going, or the signal to keep going, because they just kicked it back into gear. Claiming the best black tag team combination of all time. I'm quite certain that was not true even in 1988.
Pretty sure they had to be the worst. They had to be.
They had to have been the worst. I mean, they're the worst tag team I've ever seen, let alone the first black tag team. So, yeah. Eddie Gilbert versus George Fox. In case you were thinking we were done with the parade of horrible jobbers.
George Fox wasn't that bad until Eddie Gilbert gave him 3 something or others.
Hit me.
You know what it was? It was when David Flair hit Eric Bischoff. They were the weird half-fist, overhand thumping things like this on the guy's head.
I guess.
I mean, that's what it was.
All I know is, for those of you who have never seen the man, there was an Indian kickboxer named Raja Lion who did, I believe, I hope, one pro wrestling match with Giant Baba in Japan, and in that one match established himself as one of the very worst wrestlers of all time. So George Fox is standing in the corner as Eddie Gilbert comes out to what would later be Sting's guitar music. Maybe Sting stole the music when he beat Eddie in the match. And George is standing in the corner, and I think, hey, looks like a mini Raja Lion. And then the match begins, and I realize he wrestles like a mini Raja Lion. Maybe he just kept growing and turned into Raja Lion. I don't know. It was awful. Eddie realized how bad this guy was and pinned him immediately with a hot shot.
Well, I mean, he realized after he gave him the 3 moves. And then he was like, this is over,
Three
dude.
strikes.
Yeah.
It was 3 strikes and you're up.
Kind of looked like a skinny young JBL, but he was very jiggly around the midsection, like a fat guy who'd lost a bunch of weight too fast.
Okay.
Very jiggly.
I have nothing good to say about George Fox. Nikita Koloff cut a promo. It was funny because Eddie Gilbert had just been in the ring, and of course Eddie just runs away when Nikita's there to talk. So he runs down Gilbert for running away. He plugs the Bunkhouse Stampede. He promises to defeat Terry Taylor at Starrcade.
He's got a Bunkhouse Stampede trucker hat.
Yes.
I'd love to know how many of those they sold. And he actually, this is a direct quote, which should be in a book of timeless wisdom. If you can survive 18 to 20 men, it'll make your body tough. Terry Taylor and Bob Emery.
Terry Taylor and Bob Emery. So, Eddie Gilbert's on commentary. He is doing his own predictions. And he does, in fact, he picks all the heels to win with 2 exceptions. First, Barry Windham and Steve Williams. There is no heel, so he predicts them to kill each other, so we'll never have to worry about either one ever again. And then he gets to Dusty and Lex, and he just says, I have no comment.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he says Ric Flair is going to beat Ronnie Garvin, and he's going to take all of us out for free drinks, including you, Tony Schiavone. And I bet that prediction came true.
He also plugged the video cassette tape that you can buy for $62.92 or whatever. And he said, I'm going to take out Missy Hyatt after Starrcade.
He did say that.
They were, in fact, together at the time.
So Bob Emery is pretty horrible, but he was like Mike Jackson compared to some of the geeks we've seen on this
He
show.
had a good physique. He actually looked like a wrestler.
That helped. It was a boring squash. Taylor won with a figure 4. Then you go to cut a promo, and Taylor goes first. And I'm thinking, man, I've been hard on Taylor. This is one of his better promos. He thanked his parents for creating such a great wrestler.
Thank you, Mom and Dad, for doing such a great job.
Yeah.
With me.
Yes. And he said he'd be circling Nikita all night long. Nikita had talked about how hard it would be to fight 20 guys in one night. Well, I'm going to be moving around you so fast you'll think there's 25 guys in the ring. I'm going to wear you out. I'm going to snap your legs with a figure 4. I'll be done with you once and for all.
Snap him like a toothpick.
That's right. I thought, hey, that wasn't a bad promo. And then Eddie Gilbert goes and just blows him out of the water.
Eddie Gilbert was, in fact, great.
Terry Taylor wasn't. He's got this rep as being like a future star whose career was derailed by a horrible gimmick. He was a guy whose career was ruined by a horrible gimmick.
Yes.
So Eddie's talking about facing Nikita the night before Starrcade in New York. And then Tony gives one last big plug for the go-home show. And whatever happens, we'll be back next week to talk about it. And that was that.
And here's your card. Eddie Gilbert, Larry Zbyszko, and Rick Steiner versus Jimmy Garvin, Michael Hayes, and the newcomer Sting. Dr. Death, Steve Williams versus Barry Windham for the UWF heavyweight title. Rock and Rolls versus the Midnights in a Skywalker's match.
Yes.
Scaffold match. Nikita Koloff, Terry Taylor for the NWA and UWF World Television Championships. First ever in wrestling, they said.
That's right.
Arn Tully versus Road Warriors for the NWA World Tag Titles in the Road Warriors' hometown.
That's right, too.
Dusty Rhodes, Lex Luger in a cage match for the NWA U.S. title.
With Dusty's career at stake.
That's right,
for
90 days.
Yes.
His 90-day career. Yeah. And Rick, because, 90 days, everybody will forget about Dusty.
Dusty who?
He will no longer be able to have a career.
Dusty.
And Ric Flair, Ron Garvin steel cage match for the NWA World Heavyweight title, which I guess this is the show we will review next week.
Okay.
Man, I can't wait.
Woo!
So that's the plan, everybody. All right, we're out of here. Don't forget, if you want to watch this show in beautiful HD, you can subscribe at video.f4wonline.com. We've got over a dozen shows up right now. So if you sign up, you not only get this show, but every show we have done and every show we will do. And that includes the 2017 Christmas show in all of its train wreck glory, as well as the Tuesday show, which features Retro Raw and Nitro, the 2 shows from 19 years ago this week. 5 hours we have to watch every Tuesday in order to do that show. And then Thursday with Granny, NXT, and the Thursday night potpourri, where we watch pretty much whatever we want, which this past week was bloopers, bleeps, and body slams.
Or there were no bleeps.
They're usually better, but that's what we watched this week. Anyway, that's it for me, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again after a while.
Adios.